Hi, everyone. How are you?
Hello and welcome. Hello and welcome to this online event. You've been doing lots of interesting work. You've also obtained a PhD in education, and you'll be talking to us and presenting your study on blended communities, on blended education. Thank you very much for being with us. I would just like to tell everyone that what has really struck me the most about you in your presentation was that, or let's say in your bio, is that you do want a world where there are no educational boundaries for students. So basically you would dream or want to imagine a world where we would have the same possibilities in education. And I think that's very noble, and I'm very excited to hear from you, as I'm sure are all of our attendees today. So over to you, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I do dream of a world where there are no boundaries. I teach and have been an administrator for online K-12 schools serving grades 6 through 12. Also, I'm an adjunct faculty for an online college. I've earned my degrees in both brick-and-mortar colleges and in virtual colleges. And I think with the technology that we have today, we have no excuse for being able to offer higher education and public school to anyone who needs it and meet the needs of the learner. So that is my goal. Hopefully one day we can all work together to achieve it.
Thank you very much for this. Please, you have prepared a very interesting presentation, which is actually a summary of a recent study that you did. So we are all excited to hear about it. Thank you very much.
So thank you all for your time today as I share as Dr. Oakes alluded to, this is my dissertation research study, but it also does apply to what I do for a living and what I'm passionate about. And the study it was titled A Quantitative Ex Post Facto Study, Blended Learning Communities Inside Florida's Brick-and-Mortar High School Classrooms. And I'm a native Floridian. I've only ever lived in the state of Florida, and this is my familiarity for education is inside the state of Florida. And if you're like my family, I lost you at quantitative or ex post facto. However, if you've ever asked the question, what is blended learning? What does it do? Is it effective? Is it sustainable? Then my presentation will help you be more familiar with the topic of blended learning and how schools inside Florida, public schools, are actually using online education to create a blended learning community and how it's impacting student success. The case study addresses a gap in peer-reviewed research by exploring the impact of the quantity of time spent by the virtual teacher of record and the students who are in blended learning communities inside their brick-and-mortar high school classrooms and how it affects student achievement. So this means that the students go to school, and while they're in school during the day, they're actually in a computer lab, most likely, completing an online course. That's what it means by the blended learning component inside Florida's brick-and-mortar classrooms. In the research, a public K-12 online provider in the southeast of Florida partners with a South Florida public school district to create blended learning communities utilizing their teaching model and online curriculum. These blended learning communities offer students the ability to complete a course online while enrolled in their brick-and-mortar high school. The students have access to a state-certified virtual teacher of record through the public K-12 online provider, along with a classroom teacher who acts as a facilitator in their learning while the students work from a computer lab in their public high school. So they actually have multiple people who are there to support their learning. They have a virtual teacher of record, and when I say teacher of record, that means on their report card, that is the teacher who shows as their teacher for that particular subject. The virtual teacher is certified in the subject area for which they're teaching. The facilitator in the computer lab may not have that specific certification, but they are an educator there to support the learning of the students and help them navigate any technological challenges that they may experience. Blended learning offers innovative opportunities in online education and requires a connection as strong as possible between pedagogy, technology, and the needs of the learner. We all know that we have diverse needs for our learners in K-12 and in higher education. but building relationships with students and offering multiple delivery options for synchronous and asynchronous online teaching and learning are effective research-based strategies for teaching the diverse populations in virtual environments. The purpose of the study was to examine whether the independent variable, which was the face-to-face interaction and one-on-one small group and whole group instruction by the virtual teacher of record, and how it impacted the dependent variable, which was successful course completions. Because while the students may be enrolled in the virtual class and while they may go to their computer lab every day, I actually wanted to look at what the impact was on the face-to-face component and if it had any impact at all on whether the students successfully completed the course, meaning that they earned a passing grade of at least 59.5%, which is a D. We want higher grades than that, but that is what we would consider successfully passing the course. The results from the case study provided the K-12 public online provider in the southeast of Florida with data revealing the overall impact of increased face-to-face time with mutual students, or those students who complete their virtual course inside of their brick-and-mortar school within that school district. The uniqueness of this study was the innovative concept of incorporating consistent, and that's the key word, consistent, face-to-face, personalized teaching and learning opportunities with the virtual teacher of record while students were completing their virtual course inside their brick-and-mortar classroom through a blended learning community. The virtual teacher of record means that the student is in the class with an assigned teacher at their virtual school, and while they may have a facilitator or teacher in the computer lab, the teacher of record is considered the virtual teacher from the public K-12 online provider. Blended and virtual learning merges multiple pedagogical models as a way to link e-learning theory to e-learning practice. E-learning, virtual learning, online learning, those are all being used interchangeably here. In blended learning communities, students collaborate with their peers, their facilitators, and their virtual teacher of record. When the virtual teacher of record visits the brick-and-mortar school to work with students face-to-face, both constructivism and social development theoretical frameworks are implemented. And 3 dimensions of e-learning exist in virtual courses. We have the users, the technology, and the services related to e-learning. The Piaget-inspired constructivism places the adult teacher as secondary in learning and the student first. And Vygotsky's social development theory also applies to virtual education because naturally students seek connections. Hold on just one moment, please.
Right, okay. We seem to be having some interruptions, but that should be fine. Are we with you, Dr. Laura Maloney?
Yes,
Hello?
I apologize for that.
That's okay. Please continue.
In Florida, our weather has not been cooperating. I talked about Vygotsky's social development theory because students naturally seek connections with others in blended learning environments. They're not typically just sitting at their desk, working at their computer. The curriculum online offers collaborative opportunities for students with other students, peer-to-peer interaction, so that they can apply what they've learned. So I'll summarize the research questions for the dissertation, and the study was guided by 2 research questions, which are worded the same except for the academic school year. And I'll explain why the school years were important in just a moment. So the first research question is, what relationship, if any, exists between the quantity of face-to-face instruction by the virtual teacher of record from a public K-12 online provider in the southeast of Florida and successful course completions in blended learning communities inside the high school of the South Florida Public School District? The only difference between the 2 questions is the first question is for the 2013-14 school year, and the second is for the 14-15 academic school year. And then the study was guided by 2 hypotheses for each of the 2 research questions. Basically, the first hypothesis for research question 1 is that there is no significant relationship between the quantity of face-to-face instruction by the virtual teacher of record. And the second hypothesis states that there is a significant relationship between the quantity of face-to-face instruction by the virtual teacher of record. And the first hypothesis for Reacher's question 2 is there is no significant relationship between the quantity of face-to-face instruction by the virtual teacher of record for the 2014-15 academic school year, and then that there is a significant relationship between the 14 and 15 academic school year. Some assumptions for the study include that there were continuous enrollments in each course throughout the school year, the entire academic school year from August to June. For the 2013-14 school year, each subject had 1 visit per semester, which is typically in the state of Florida the semesters are between August and January, and then January to May. So in the 13-14 school year, the virtual school teacher of record only visited the public school once per semester. However, for the 14 and 15 school year, the virtual school changed their contract and they started visiting the schools every month instead of every semester. And hence, me wanting to investigate to see if that actually had any impact on the success rates for our students that we were sharing with that public school district. Data was collected in an ethical and consistent method through a protected server and stored automatically to a data warehouse where it was vetted for accuracy. And as Nicole and Kim mentioned earlier, the security of the data was extremely important, and it was collected in an ethical and consistent method. Also, all data were anonymized, and that's student data and their personal identification information. Only schools were provided to me as the researcher, and in my research that I shared, I didn't use the school names. I applied an identifier to each of the schools using a letter of the alphabet. The quantitative methodology was used, including archival data collected for both of those academic school years by the public K-12 online provider, and I used a 7-step process calculating using Microsoft Excel to test all the hypotheses of the relationship between the student enrollments, which was X, and successful course completions. Not even successful, all course completions, but the data at the end shows successful course completions. The first step in data collection was determining which schools had offered the same which of the public schools used the virtual school for 2 consecutive years to teach the same exact subject. So out of about 84 schools, only 25 schools were used in the study because those 25 schools had consecutive course enrollments in the same subjects for both the 2013-14 and 2014-15 academic school years. That means that school A had, for example, a foreign language, the same foreign language from one academic school year to the next, so that I could see and compare the data. I didn't look at schools who had one subject one year and a different subject the next year. They had to have the same exact subject for both years to look at the successful completions. And student enrollments in half-credit courses for the 2013 and 14 academic school year totaled 6,559, while the student enrollments in half-credit courses for the 2014-15 year totaled 6,086. So there are some high numbers. There are a lot of students in the state of Florida taking our virtual classes. The hypotheses were tested using a Pearson. For all of you technical people that want to know all of the nuts and bolts of this, the hypotheses were tested using a Pearson product moment correlation and calculated with Microsoft Excel. The statistical test investigated how the independent variable of face-to-face instruction by the virtual teacher of record impacted the dependent variable, which of course was successful course completions. This looks like a very busy figure and chart. However, if you look at it, the figure shows completion yields by school. So there are 25 schools listed, school A through school Y, and they're comparing the 2013-14 and 2014-15 school years. The color blue represents the yield for the 2013-14 school year, and the color yellow represents the 2014-15 school year. As you can see, some schools' yields did not improve, did not show a rise in completions due to the increased face-to-face, when I was conducting this study, I was curious because the assumption of a lot of people were, of course it's going to impact it. But as you can see, it actually didn't impact some of the schools. So we do have outliers, and that's for some future research. But 5 of the schools did not experience an increase in completion. However, 19 out of the 25 schools did increase the completion yields. The average yield increase for all 25 schools combined was 10.25% for the 2014-15 school year over the 2013-14 school year. So a 10.25% increase in yield for successful student completions. The limitations of the case study included the results from the data analysis cannot be used to imply the same results would pertain to all virtual students completing courses in their brick-and-mortar schools within blended learning communities. Also, the geographically limited nature of the study prevents its results from being applied on a broader scale, and one study cannot claim to predict results for all virtual students in blended learning communities within or outside of the state of Florida. Finally, a correlation between number of visits and number of successful course completions may imply a causal relationship exists. However, it does not prove that one thing caused the other thing. So we can assume, but I have not proven that in my research study. The statistical test investigated how the independent variable impacted the dependent variable, and since the Pearson product moment correlation indicated a significant correlation of 10.25%, we can interpret that the increased face-to-face visits potentially led to an increase in course completions. Next slide shows the recommendations. The data analysis included 25 schools with various academic subjects from math, science, English language arts, driver's ed, foreign languages. So suggestions for future research include digging deeper with regarding possible reasons for decreases in some schools for the course completions when the student enrollments were increased. Some reasons that they could be not as successful, perhaps the rigor of the subject, the experience of the virtual teacher and their ability to successfully lead a blended learning community, the experience of the public school facilitator and perhaps whether they are certified in their subject area, and their ability to support the virtual teacher. And we also have gender, age, grade level of students enrolled in the virtual courses. All of these are factors when determining the success of a student or lack thereof. So despite the number of face-to-face visits from the virtual teacher, we can look at socioeconomic status of the teachers and students and overall transientness of the teachers and students within the public school. To replicate this study, it would be imperative to have detailed logs showing how many hours were spent face-to-face. This study looked at the number of days that were spent inside a school. However, some of our public schools in the state of Florida are on a block schedule, meaning they meet every other day for 90 or 120 minutes. Other schools may meet for 50 minutes every single day. So really being able to have more detailed information for a specific number of hours spent, and then being able to break that up by one-on-one, small group instruction, and whole group instruction, that will really add to the study. The next 3 slides include references cited in my presentation if you would like to continue researching this on your own. However, if you would like to reach out to me for any questions, my presentation is available for you. My contact information is on the slide, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. This is an area that I'm passionate about, and I really do appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, Dr. Laura Maloney, joining us from Florida for this very interesting and pertinent presentation on the online blended communities. Rasmus, you will have had some questions coming in for Dr. Laura. Would you be able to share any of those with us? We still have a couple of minutes, so yeah, thanks very much.
Yeah, sure. Hi. So here's a question. Let me just read it for you. You talk about a virtual teacher that visits the school and teaches the students face-to-face. Does that mean that the teacher is actually there in the classroom in person? Does that suggest that a face-to-face component makes the course more successful than a purely online course? Thanks from China.
Thank you so much. You know, that's a great question, because a lot of times when we think of face-to-face component, it's like we have right now. We're face-to-face. I can see you, you can see me. But no, I'm actually talking about the teacher physically going into the classroom. And as an administrator over blended learning communities, I would actually go visit as well and work with students and administrators and facilitators. But I'm talking about physically visiting the virtual teacher of record, physically going into the public school and in person offering, doing lesson planning, old school, old-fashioned lesson planning, to offer one-on-one instruction for struggling learners, some small group instruction, large group instruction, but they're physically there offering their support personally. And I think that helps build a relationship with the student, because they see that the teacher is actually a person and not a robot. And they want to perform well for someone that they have a relationship with. So the research does indicate that that face-to-face component does increase successful student completions.
Thank you. Okay, here comes number 2. What is the profile of a teacher of record or virtual teacher, and how is the quality of their teaching assessed?
Well, the virtual public school is a public school funded by the state of Florida, as is other public schools in the state of Florida. So we are all assessed by annual evaluations that are set out. The parameters are set by the Department of Education for the state of Florida. We do have to revise just a little bit, since we don't have principals that can walk into our classroom with clipboards and evaluate us in person, but we are evaluated on, we evaluate teachers on their ability to engage students in their live lessons. Similar to the setting that we're in right now, we have an online offices that students can come into, and we do teach, and we are evaluated based on the teaching. As far as the expertise of that teacher, they are considered highly qualified in the state of Florida. They do have to be certified in their subject area to be employed at Florida Virtual School, and to be able to teach that subject area. So while the facilitator in the classroom at the brick-and-mortar school may be a paraprofessional or support, they may not be the teacher of record for that particular subject, but the virtual teacher of record certainly is certified in that subject area for which they're teaching.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much for this. So now we see actually that the definitions again are not always so straightforward. And also what is interesting and important, which has come up in our podcast series several times before, is that teachers need to be qualified. And well, that brings a whole lot of new questions, issues, and problems with itself. So thank you very much, Dr. Laura Maloney, and thank you, Rasmus, for the questions. Thank you, and please stay with us if you do have the time, and I'm sure that all of our attendees are participants from all over the world that are joining us on in this online event today are grateful as much as I am. So thank you very much again, and yeah, we hope to have you with us at some time in the future again. Thank you.